Hello and welcome to the Fallen Podcast. I'm your host, Big Al, and boy, once again, never disappointing. Do we have a special one here for you today? This one's gonna be a little bit different. So, this is a buddy of mine. Like, this is a friend of mine that I met actually online gaming. Will and I just kind of ended up in the same circles and got to find out that he's a veteran like me. So want to bring him in and actually talk to him a little bit and find out about his story and just what it is that he does. So without any further ado, we'll welcome Wild Bill McMahon,
Hey,
aka Mysterio. How you doing, boss man? This is Big Al.
good. How you
Yep,
doing this morning,
doing
Big Al?
pretty good, boss man. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, let's see. I am, gosh, how old am I? 57.
57. There you go.
I've got 7 grandchildren and one on the way. And my wife and I have been married for 32 years this past December. And we met in Norfolk, Virginia when I was basically, in the Navy. And spent a little time in Norfolk, came down here to Pensacola on staff duty. And when it was basically the admiral I was working for was chief of naval education and training. So once he got ready to retire, they gave me the option. I could either go for some orders or I could stay in Pensacola for a while. So they sent me to NTTC Corey Station. So I spent about a year there. And when my time was up there, going back and looking for orders, try to get back into special programs, which was like staff duties and all that stuff. I can't remember what it was called, but I was told they needed my rate and rank out the sea, and I wasn't going back to a staff. And after 7 years of being home, I wasn't going back out the sea. So we just got out and decided to stay here in Pensacola.
Wow. So a lot to digest there. But I guess what inspired you to become a cook in the Navy?
Long as I can remember, I always liked to cook. I think my mom was telling me I made my first cake from scratch when I was about 6. And then anytime there was a family gathering, all my uncles would be in, watching whatever, whether it was football, basketball, or whatever, and they'd always be hollering at the TV, which just made me uneasy. So I'd be in the kitchen with my grandmother, and it just went downhill from there.
Wow, that is awesome. So you joined the Navy as a cook. Obviously, I mean you were pretty good. How did your culinary skills like improve? Like once you got there, because the question directly is, you're cooking with grandma, and it sounds like you got some maybe Italian heritage, right? So, but grandma's in there, and and you're learning that. Now you go in the Navy. Do you bring that with you, or do they teach you? How does that work?
Um, they pretty much teach you, and it's not rocket science. Follow the recipe, you're pretty much good to go. Um, and that was pretty much about it. So my first duty station after boot camp in A school was the USS America, and
Oh yeah.
I can remember being in A school, and the detailers would come and talk to us and all that, and they said if you put down anything about Norfolk, Virginia, or an aircraft carrier, that's where you're going. And I grew up right about 20 miles north of Philadelphia, and I figured, okay, that's 319 miles from home. So it would have made it easy to go home all the time. So next thing you know, I'm on an aircraft carrier cooking for 5,000 people.
Wow. So cooking for 5,000 people when you were on there, uh obviously do you food does have a huge effect on morale.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
did so how did that affect you guys' cooking?
It was pretty much a competition between all the cooks who could put the best, whatever we were assigned to make that day, whether it was an entree, vegetables, whatever. And the group of guys I worked with, it was always a competition who could do the best gravy, the best soup, the best pancakes.
Oh really? So
Yeah.
you guys actually turned it into So I hate to say this, but I don't think we get that a lot from our Army cooks. I mean, it's almost like they try to see who can make it the worst or something. I don't know.
Yeah, now it was always who could do the best, and then you had bragging rights till the next meal, and that was about it.
Are there any special rituals or traditions that you guys had on board the America, like food related or anything?
Um, Not really. Pretty much the only thing I can really remember is every Friday it was either steak and crab legs or steak and shrimp.
Yeah, I mean, that just sucks. You know what I mean? Steak
Yeah.
and I got to do this surf and turf on Fridays. That just that seems. So you said that you were a staff, and could you explain to us what staff duty? Because staff duty in the Army that I'm familiar with is totally different than what you mentioned. So
Right.
could you kind of tell us a little bit about what staff duty is?
All right. Let me step back just a little bit when I was on the America. So when I first got to the ship, they put me down in the storerooms. So I was down in the freezers and dry storerooms and all that. Um, and I think by the time, probably a couple months before we left for Desert Storm, they put me up in the galley finally. And somehow I wound up having a really good relationship with our division officer. And by the time I left the ship, actually my last probably 9 months to a year on the ship, I was in the CO's mess, basically taking care of the captain. How I did that, I have no idea. um,
And I'm assuming that when you're cooking for the captain, I mean, does he bring his own food on board? Did you got? I mean,
now, one deployment. So basically, everything for the captain I just get from the wardroom, which is where all the other officers eat. So usually, if we were out to sea or whatever, it would be the captain and then the carrier air group commander or the CAG. And apparently, they were old Vietnam buddies, so it was always a fun time when the CAG was on board. But I would basically take care of those two: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Take care of their staterooms, take care of their uniforms, stuff like that. So my division officer wound up getting orders to Commander Naval Air Force Atlantic Fleet, which is in Norfolk. And he came over to the ship the one day. He said, "Hey," he said, "you're up for orders. You want to come over here with me?" I'm like, "Sure, let's go." I didn't know what I was getting into. But basically at Airland, so Commander Naval Air Force Atlantic Fleet takes care of everything and anything that has to do with aviation from the Mississippi all the way to the Azores. So anything that flies or has to do with an airplane was under this admiral. So he got me orders over there. They had a small mess in the headquarters, and we fed maybe 40 people a day. And the admiral staff, basically these guys were all, well, of course they were pilots. They were all Vietnam era pilots, and they were all, within 2 or 3 years of retiring.
What year is this that you're talking
Oh, I'm
about
sorry.
here?
This goes back, let's see. Oh, 90, 91, 92.
Okay, right. Yeah. So this is peak Desert Shield, Desert Storm era.
Right before all right after I don't know, time flies by, but
Right. Yeah, I got
right
you.
after the mess. Um, so, and these captains, great guys, but they were crazy. Just, listening to them talk and picking at each other and everything. It was just a really cool experience. And, most people, I was a E4. So most times when you go and you see a captain or you see an admiral, you like freeze because you don't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, it's Captain Smash usually.
Yeah. But these guys, they joke around with you. They come in the galley and steal stuff and all kinds of crazy stuff.
So you're cooking for 40, and I guarantee you that people that are listening to this have no idea what you guys are cooking, because you're not just like cooking. I mean, explain what a normal meal would be, like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What like a day would be.
So for breakfast, if they came into the mess and wanted breakfast, of course, we always had fresh fruit. We had all kinds of fresh baked pastries, cinnamon rolls.
Handmade, right? I mean,
Handmade.
fresh. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be there at 4 o'clock in the morning making the dough.
Yeah.
And then we do Danish, like a classical French Danish, where you can taste the butter and all that good stuff in it, not like the Danish you go out to the store and get. Um, and then we do eggs to order. We'd have, one or two different types of breakfast meat. We'd make them any kind of breakfast sandwich they wanted. Um, Breakfast, it really wasn't a whole lot of people, maybe 10, if that. Lunch was bigger. And like I was saying, these guys are all Vietnam era pilots getting ready to retire. So they're still trying to watch their weight, but they like to eat. So lunch, every meal we had, there was always lots of fresh fruit. I think if I remember right, on Fridays, we did bacon cheeseburgers, and we'd have 2 or 3 different entree choices. We'd had like a little deli bar inside the galley, so we could make them any kind of sandwich they wanted, chicken salad, tuna salad, you name it, that we had it there for them. And that was pretty much about it. If it was cold out, we'd do soups and grilled cheese, and they were just pretty much, they were happy with anything.
Yeah.
But it was all kind of like a plated meal, like walking into a restaurant.
That's the key right there. It's like walking into a restaurant. I mean, that's what these guys are getting.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So here's a good one for you. So my first day or two there, the chief gets me, said, "Come on, it's time to go meet the admiral." And I'm like, "Oh my God," I'm freaking out, like, I'm getting ready to meet Jesus or something.
Well, he is kind of on board, right?
Oh yeah. So we get down to his office. He's on the phone. He waves us in, and he's still talking. So I'm looking around. Can't help but stand at attention. So I'm looking around his office, and it's wall-to-wall pictures, and it's all Blue Angel pictures.
Okay.
And I'm like, what the heck? So come to find out, he was the CO of the Blue Angels from 72 to 74. So met the admiral, talked a little bit. That was about it. And then usually every morning when the admiral got there, one of the aides would call and say, "Hey, the admiral's here." We'd take him down fruit and coffee and all that. So that day I get home and I call my mom, and I grew up around NAS Willow Grove, which 20, 30 miles north of Philadelphia. So we'd see the Blue Angels all the time. And I haven't been to, even though I live in the home of the Blue Angels, I haven't been to an air show here. But back then, as soon as they would secure the planes, you could go touch the planes, meet the pilots and all that. So I get home, I call my mom and said, "Hey," I said, "send down all the Blue Angel stuff you still have." So a couple weeks later, it shows up, and I found the picture I was looking for. I was 6 years old, and it was me and, I guess, my childhood friend, buddy, whatever, had this picture taken with this commander. And I'm looking at the picture, and I'm like, "Yep, that's him."
No.
So I take it to work with me the next day, and I walked in and gave him, put the fruit and everything down on his desk, and I'm standing there, and he looks up and says, like, "What do you want?" And I said, "If you got a second, sir, can you just look at this picture?" So I hand it to him. He looks at it, and he's like, he looked up at me, looked back down. He said, "Don't even tell me that's effing you." I said, "Okay, sir." And we were buddies after that. So let's see. That was Admiral Less. He was a vice admiral, so 3-star admiral. He was able to have one MS or one cook in his house to take care of the public part of the house, his uniform, stuff like that. Within about
wait. What do you mean house?
Well, the admiral lived on base, just like Navy housing, but
Wow.
it was huge. It was probably 8,000 or 9,000 square feet. So basically, my new job was the whole first floor of the house was considered the public part of the house. So that's what I took care of. And then, of course, I made sure he had uniforms ready to go for the next day if they were coming in. And basically, when I started working at the house, that's like late 91, early 92, when they started all the BRAC closings and decommissionings.
Right, yeah.
So he'd come home at lunch, and then him and the aide would fly out, and they'd go decommission a squadron or something. So I'd make sure, I'd stop in the morning and say, "Hey, what kind of uniform do you want for this or whatever?" And, he'd tell me full dress or whatever. And, I go home, rig his uniforms, make sure everything's nice and straight. And,
I mean, so you're putting his metal racks on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Here's another good one for you. So he comes down the one day, comes home, eats lunch, and it was full chokers, sword belt, everything. So I'm doing the dishes. The aide's sitting there at the kitchen table, and the admiral comes down, and he was an A6 pilot, and I forget when it was. He basically punched out over North Vietnam, hit the canopy, and had a lot of back issues. So he was still, I forget what they called it. He was still allowed to fly, but he couldn't fly combat. So anyway, I get everything ready. He comes down. He's dressed. I already had the sword on the table for him. And I never messed with him unless he started with me first. It was just, I'm not going to pick on a 3-star admiral.
Right.
And he's like, Bill, how do I look? And then I'm like, oh my God, he's talking to me. What am I supposed to do? So I turned around and looked at him. I'm like, sir, he said, how do I look? And I'm getting confused because he's never done this before. And I'm looking at him. He's like, damn it, I asked you a question. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going back to the boat. So anyway, I don't know how familiar you are with the formal Navy chokers.
Okay.
It's almost like a chef coat. So I'm pulling on the sleeve, and he's like, asked me again. He said, damn it, how do I look? And I could see the aide out of the corner of my eyes getting pissed. And he was a lieutenant, I think probably just got out of flight school or whatever he did. But he was more scared of the admiral than me. And I stepped back. I looked at him. I said, sir, no disrespect, but with all those medals, you look like a Mexican general. I'm like, yeah, I'm going back to the boat. He busted out laughing and said, Bill, I didn't know you had the balls to say that to me. and gave me a hug, grabbed the aide, and they left.
See, that's awesome. Because I had a podcast last night, and I actually made this comment. The commander's the loneliest dude on the installation. He's the loneliest dude on the boat. He's the loneliest dude because everybody works for him.
Right.
He doesn't have any, true friends. So yeah, that's awesome that you look like a Mexican general. I love it.
I was like, thank God he had a good sense of humor. And then I forget where he came from before he came to Airland. But anyway, Frank Kelso at the time was a 4-star admiral. He was chief of naval operations at the time. So anytime they'd have like a little party or whatever, or get together, they do three or four couples. I'd take care of dinner, dessert. I'd have a couple of the guys from the mess come over and help and all that. So this is a Monday or Tuesday.
But what's your rank at this time?
E5.
And you're like, you're balling. I mean, for lack of a better term,
I was an E5 in the E7's job.
And are you living in the quarters as well, or
no?
Okay,
no. But that's where basically when I went to work every morning, I went to his house. That's
right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's like.
So the missus the one day saying, "Oh, we're going to have a couple people over for dinner Friday night," and or they said they were having friends from DC spend the weekend, and wanted to know if I could do dinner Friday night. I'm like, okay, you're asking me? And of course, I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I guess the missus had a couple appointments, and so she wasn't home when the guest showed up. And the admiral calls and said, hey, I'm running late. I'll be there shortly. Guest should be there, whatever time it was. He said, just make sure you answer the door. I'm like, okay. And, they didn't say who it was or whatever. So I hear the doorbell ring, and, I had hors d'oeuvres and stuff ready to go. They had like a little mini bar in one of the sitting rooms that was all set up. So I go and answer the door, and there's this old man, and he had like the polyester polo shirt and the Bermuda shorts with the socks all the way up to his knees, and really weird looking pair of shoes. And I'm like, oh God, this guy looks familiar. So I bring him in and take him to the sitting room and everything, got their bags, made him a drink, and here comes the admiral. And I thought this guy looked familiar, but I couldn't picture him. And so the admiral comes in, says hi and everything, introduces me, and said, oh, Bill, have you ever met Admiral Kelso? And I'm like, oh my God, holy shit. I knew who he was, but couldn't put two and two together. So this was the chief of naval operations at the time, sitting there and looked like he walked out of a nursing home the way he was dressed.
So let me ask you this: they're done for the weekend? I mean, does that mean you're on duty the weekend? Are you cooking?
No,
okay.
I just did dinner Friday night and I was done for the weekend.
Okay, awesome.
So in the meantime, when I was working in the admiral's quarters, I think it was my wife discovered that Johnson and Wales, big culinary school, had a campus in Norfolk. So she got me all set up, and so even during this, like, it was like a 2-year time period. So I'm working for the admiral and going to culinary school at the same time,
Oh wow.
and it was 3 nights a week, and both Saturday, all day Sunday, for like 18 months.
And no doubt you're PCing and receiving the fruits of your labor, right? Because
Yep.
you're displaying the stuff that you're learning in school. That's amazing.
Yeah. And now, if you go back and look into the culinary side of the Navy, they're big on, like a culinary education, um, more technical than it was. Like, okay, here's a recipe, go make it. But at that time, I think there were maybe 6 or 7 cooks like myself that were actually either in culinary school or had a culinary degree
Wow. In the entire
in the entire Navy. So I mean, there were guys that were good, but they didn't have
they didn't have the formal
they
training.
right. They didn't
The
have the formal.
classical training. I mean, you're talking about making French Danish with the butter that you can taste it. I'm just sitting there saying, I don't even know where I could find that within 50 miles from me here. You know
Probably
what I
not.
mean? That's incredible. And so you transition ultimately, your time in the Navy comes to an end. You decide you're not going back to sea. So now you're in Pensacola.
Yep.
And so what happens?
Basically, with the help of my wife and everything, we're just looking around at different jobs and all that, and I wound up being a manager at Applebee's. So,
Okay.
and that all kind of, everything in the Navy, which a lot of it was just attention to detail. Pay attention to what you're doing and do it well. And that really just pretty much follows everything I've done.
Now, how much of your being a manager at Applebee's was around you actually cooking? Were you cooking, or were you just in charge of the operations?
So there were 5 of us. There was a general manager and then 4 managers. So we'd all rotate between, front of the house. We'd play kitchen manager for a month or 2. And the best part to me, it was when I was kitchen manager or was scheduled to be on the line cooking or whatever. To me, that was fun, being a line cook.
Okay. Now, from that, you somehow end up in the school system,
Right.
right?
So let's see. So I spent about 2 years with Applebee's, got tired of working nights and weekends. One of the biggest hospitals in Pensacola was right across the street, Sacred Heart, which the company I work for now, Sodexo, they had so Sodexo's basically food services contract management. So they were running the food service there. There was a couple people that would always come over from the hospital and say, "Oh, you need to come over here with us." So finally I made the switch and I took care of the cafeteria in the hospital. We also put a Starbucks in, all that good stuff. And then keep it short, we moved to South Georgia for 2 years, moved back to Pensacola, came back to work for Applebee's, same people. And I guess I had they were brothers and sisters. I think there was 2 sisters and a brother. Their dad actually had the same job I have right now. And he was getting ready to go to a new account that we got over in New Orleans. So I applied, and I figured it gets me out of working nights and weekends. I don't want to be a lunch lady because that, when you say lunch lady, there's a whole big, people don't actually know what they do.
Okay.
But, just, what you remember from school, your
Right.
lunch
Yeah.
ladies.
Yeah.
And I figured, okay, with this company, I could take a job. And then within a year, then I could look for another job. So I figured, all right, I can take this, do this for now. I don't have to upset the family and move and everything else. And that was 17 years ago. So
Okay.
May of 2006 is when I started.
And now what do you do?
So basically, my title is Senior Operations Manager. slash
Okay.
chef. So basically, I'm responsible for the daily operations of 31 commercial kitchens, and we feed about 36,000 meals a day with about 182 employees.
Could you say that one more again?
All right. So my title is Senior Operations Manager. So I've got, we've got my GM or my director, and then me. So basically, I'm responsible for the daily operations. So we have 31 schools in the district. So I'm responsible for the operations of all 31 kitchens. We've got 182 employees, and we feed roughly 36,000 meals a day.
Wow. Now, that's incredible. Now, when it comes to health and nutrition, butter that you can taste versus feeding, little, you can't do that with
There,
little
not
kids,
there.
right?
No, and we do have a dietitian on staff. And if you're familiar, like with the National School Lunch Program, where, the kids, they're either free, reduced, or full paid based on, parents' income and everything. Since everything is federally funded, we have to follow all the federal guidelines. So we've got a dietitian that keeps us on track. And it's basically, our company does a lot. We've got a whole culinary team, marketing, all kinds of crazy stuff. And I've shared some of the pictures of our cafeterias with you before.
Yeah, I was saying if you could, man, we're gonna try to get some of those pictures and put them in the link so people can actually see some of the stuff that this guy's. It's amazing. But I guess it's the food still flavorful, even because you got
Yeah.
to follow national guidelines, and that's like sometimes that's probably worse than hospital food, right?
Pretty much. But there's ways to, get past all that with seasonings and sauces and different things like that. Um, and we pretty much try to stay with, what the kids like and, meet the guidelines, well, not the best we can, but we have to meet, certain guidelines on fats, sugars, all that stuff. They have to have so many orange vegetables a week.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So
That's
orange,
awesome.
basically orange vegetable is baked sweet potato fries. So we'll do those with depending on how they come out of the oven, we'll just sprinkle them like with a little bit of cinnamon.
Uh-huh.
They eat the heck out of them.
So, out of all of the cooking that you've done and all of the different, I mean, because we got Applebee's there, we got the hospital, and the different admirals, and now the school system. What's your favorite? I mean, what's been the one that you've actually thoroughly enjoyed the most? Like, hey, yeah, I get to do what I love. It's kind of free of restrict. I don't know. What's the
It's
best?
To me, it's the school district.
The school district,
Yep.
really? That's awesome. Just would have never, how does a Navy guy go to being the the manager of the school district?
Well, I'm feeding more people than I did in the Navy. Um, I guess to me, it's kind of, if you look at our county, when you get down to like Gulf Breeze and the Navarre area, which I think you're a little familiar with from your time.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So there's more money.
You think?
Basically the coast is a little more affluent. There's more money. There's kids can do whatever they want. And then we go all the way up. I think our county borders on Alabama, Flemington area up there, and that's more rural. I can get the kids in Gulf Breeze and Navarre to eat goat cheese, and if I would take that up to Jay, Florida, they would shoot me.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the northern part of the county is more meat and potatoes.
Awesome.
So it's kind of like trying to find a mix or a
So it's
balance
like
between the two.
it's almost like you're because when you're in the Navy, you have all of these ethnicities that you're actually having to cook for, and trying to get those. But now you're in the school system, and that makes it's different social economic groups, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. And the one thing that's a challenge that I like with the school district. So being a contractor, we bill the school district every month for the number of meals we serve. So if we say we made 10,000 meals today, and we only had 2 kids show up to eat, we only get paid for those 2 kids.
Whoa.
So I don't know the right word for it, but it's kind of it's like a challenge every day to make sure those kids are eating.
Yeah.
But it's not just a money thing. Depending the part of the county, a lot of kids, and I hate to say it, but a lot of kids, the best meal they're going to have all day is what they have at school.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you serious? That's across the board, I guarantee you, with most kids. Especially the way you're talking that you guys are cooking it. But on the school, I guess I got one. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this because you're directly involved in the school's 31 commercial cafeterias,
Right.
feed more kids. Do we arm the lunch lady?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we arm the lunch lady?
Oh, I wouldn't mess with any of them.
Well, I mean, well, I guess the question I'm asking is, do you think that we should? What are your thoughts on teachers and faculty actually having access to weapons in schools because of all of the shootings that are going on? Do you think that? I mean, because you're involved in this, so I mean, from you all's perspective, do you guys feel safe with the resource officers, or do you? I mean,
Yeah. I've never felt, I've never not felt safe at a school. So over the last several years, when they started more security and all that stuff, I get stuck in a lockdown at least once a month. The last lockdown they had, I guess, one of the elementary schools in the south end of our county, they had a family of raccoons come into the playground, so they locked the whole school down, which is a little ridiculous. But
for a family of raccoons.
Yeah, so they locked the whole school down. But there's been, we've had a couple different armed robberies within, I forget what the distance it is within the school, but if they have something like that go on, even if it's a mile down the street, those schools get locked down, and you can't move, you can't go anywhere, can't do anything. And pretty much our resource officers, I know just about all of them in all of our schools, so they come down, we always feed them for free, and they're great. But we also have a guardian program. And that's, somebody like yourself or whatever, they can go through with the sheriff's department and do some weapons training and all the safety stuff and all that. And they can actually volunteer to be an armed guardian in the school.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely going to put some more information about that in the chat, because that's a good program. I was not aware of that. Man.
Yeah, we've got, there's people that fight it. They don't want people walking around the school with guns, but to me, they're going to be the first ones yelling and screaming when something happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody gets hurt. It's like, what do you want?
Oh man. So, I mean, thank you for coming on and having this conversation with me. I think it's been a great dialogue. A lot of people, we got guns and school cafeteria food and cooking for admirals. We covered about everything, right?
Keeps life exciting.
Yeah. One pointed question for you: what advice would you give, like, military veterans that are out there right now, that are looking to transition into a career, say in culinary arts, or even the school system? If you're looking at that E5 back from where you were, like, what kind of advice would you give those guys to kind of help them along?
For me, working with food has always been a passion or something I love. And I know not all of the different jobs and rates and everything in the military can cross over into something else. But, to me, when you're looking to get out, find something that you're passionate about. I can't go to work every day and hate what I'm doing, because I'm not going to do it well. And I can say in 17 years, I have never woke up in the morning and said, gee, I don't feel like going to work today.
I'm going to say that one more time. In 17 years, ladies and gentlemen, this man has never worked a day in his life. That's what he just said. He says, I couldn't sum it up any better than that.
Yep, that's about it.
Man, thanks for coming out, talking to us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill McMahon, I know Miss Mysterio, veteran culinary arts specialist turned into, what is that title one more time?
Senior Operations Manager.
Senior Operations Manager. Like, subscribe. We'll have more content coming your way. Thanks again, Bill. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is Big Al.
All right, Al, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you, boss. Thank you again.
All right, we'll catch you later.
You went, you served, and forged the relationships that only being baptized in the fire of combat can develop. At FallInVeteran.com, we understand the unique bond that veterans share. That's why we've created a platform where you can connect, share experiences, and build lifelong friendships with fellow veterans. Signing up is easy. Simply visit www.fall-in-veteran.com and create your profile. Customize it to reflect your military service, interests, and hobbies. FallInVeteran.com is more than just an online community. It's a support network where you can find resources, advice, and encouragement from those who understand what you've been through. Whether you're looking for camaraderie, mentorship, or simply a place to share your stories, FallInVeteran.com has it all. Join thousands of veterans who have already found their tribe and start connecting today. FallInVeteran.com. Come join us and experience the power of community. Sign up now at www.fall-in-veteran.com.